Thank you so much to everyone who has made some time for us today. We are going to have some fun updates from John today, as well as an awesome segment with my friend and yours, Chuck Jansen. But we'll save more about that later on. In the meantime, can you guys share with me in the chat, tell us what is your number one favorite thing about fall? It is literally 92 degrees here in St. Louis today. It does not feel like fall, but the calendar says it is so. And I want to know what you guys love doing this time of year. A black turtleneck. Barbie's got a uniform. I love it. Caramel apples. Mike Clancy's 13-year-old makes caramel apples. I'm in. The weather, Trish, I can validate that one. John, tell me what your favorite thing about fall is.
From October 1 all the way through the end of the month, every time you're outside walking around, you hear that little crunch. It's like you're walking on Rice Krispies. And I love the crunch of leaves that have fallen from the trees, just reminding you the season that you're in.
It's so good. The change of season's so good for all of us. All right, John, let's get this thing underway, shall we?
This was the question Meredith asked a moment ago. Put it back on the screen on the chance that you haven't yet answered it. I think for most of you, I've already heard the answers. So I love the season of fall. For those of you who've been hanging around O'Leary for a while, you know that it's my favorite. All four seasons are majestic and beautiful in their own ways, but fall, man, the beauty of the earth. So I do love that. And today, before I introduce our topic, I do have a couple public service announcements that I want to tell my friends about. As you know, you ladies, you gentlemen are the first to hear the good news out there in the world. So we want to make sure you hear some of the first bit of good news around the work that we're doing. Sometimes that's live events, speaking events, book launches, all kinds of stuff like that. Well, two big updates for you today. The first one is on this. You were the first to hear about this a month ago. It's an event called On Fire for Good. It's November 25th. It is at 7 o'clock sharp Central Standard Time, an evening to live inspired. We get to host this thing together. A couple updates for you on it. This is the theater where it's going to be hosted. This is the actual room. This is what it looks like when you're looking down onto the stage. And I was talking to one of my colleagues. She's a board member of ours here at Live Inspired. I think I have a photo of her. Yeah, there she is. So the board member was saying, Daddy, how do you track how full it is? Like, how do you make sure that, first of all, anybody's coming, or that you don't have too many people coming and you run out of seats? Well, those are good questions, Grace. So we started talking about, well, how can we track that? I think Miss Meredith will do it, but how can we help her? So she thought it would be cool if we tracked it with a little diagram. So Gracie helped me draw this. She's an artist. She's far more gifted than I am. So this is the little diagram that she has drawn. And then every time someone says, yeah, I'm coming in, O'Leary, Grace or Meredith or I will actually check a little box and fill up a seat. So leaders, little drum roll, please. We are 2 months out. The media has heard nothing about this. We haven't used any of our PR streams, but just by whispering it out there a little bit, we have a theater of more than 1,000 folks in total that can go, but we have already more than 515 who are going. That's an amazing number to know about just a couple weeks into this launch. So many of you on the call, your little faces are in those little dots. Your bodies are in those little dots. And if they're not in there, many of you are live streaming. We have more than 100 families from around the world already live streaming. Like, to me, that's so cool. So on the heels of Thanksgiving, as we get ready for the holiday season up ahead, to imagine that your life can be used for good fires me up. So we're going to be bringing on some of the most remarkable people in the world on one stage to remind you of the goodness, of the potential, of the value of your life. For those of you who come in live, you'll have an opportunity as a Live Inspired Together member, that's you on this call, people, to join my boys and me for brunch. Some of my team will be there. My mother might be there. It's going to be an awesome party. You don't need to buy a ticket. So some of you may live in St. Louis, but you're not attending the event. That's all right. You're our friend. You're in our community. So if you're in town, get ready to note it down. We'll meet at 10:30 Central for a little brunch. Meredith will send out more details as we get closer. For my live streaming friends, awesome. Sue, I know you're tuning in from Florida. We got folks tuning in from Chicago, from Washington, from California, from New York, all these locations already. You can learn more about live streaming at On Fire for Good. And then for my buddies who are joining us live, you better find your seat quickly there, buddy, because the thing is selling out. So it's just going to be cool. Meredith, before I turn the page on Fire for Good, what else do you want to say about it?
I want to make sure I'm not muted first. I want to say that we're so appreciative to anyone who's already gotten a ticket. I want to say it has been beyond fun to share news of what we're doing with everyone in our community, both here locally and all of you tuning in on this call. I want to say it's the most worthy thing you can do with your Saturday night after Thanksgiving. And if you haven't already made plans to join us, we really, really hope that you do. This community was the genesis of this event. We wanted us not just to live on our screens like we're doing right now, which is life-giving in its own way, but for every year there be a chance to us to connect in person and outside of the workday and with our families next to us and our friends next to us. And that's what this was started as. So thank you so much for being there. I have dropped the link in the chat for more information. So many of you have asked if you can share news of this event to your own network, and that we say a resounding YES exclamation point. I'll also provide some images in the chat, and again the link, and you can reach out to me personally if you want specifics, but we'd welcome any help you could give us in spreading the news of this beautiful night far and wide. So appreciate that in advance.
Listen, I don't know what tryptophan is, but I promise you the pancakes I will be serving you will have no tryptophan in them, Kim Seal. They're going to have love, baby. They're going to have love in them, and it's going to be worthy checking out. So that's the brunch ahead of time. The event itself, I have sisters tuning in from 2 different states with their kids, and I have a couple other sisters who are flying in for it. I have a brother who lives in town, but he won't be in town for it, but he's tuning in virtually with his family. It's going to be so life-giving. And so just as you race through your days and your holidays, join us. I promise you it will be a gift, whether you are in the theater or you're at home with your family or a roommate or a buddy or a glass of wine or a cup of coffee. It's going to be a wonderful Saturday night. I honestly cannot wait to share it with you. So get ready for that. That's one bit of news. We're more than halfway sold out internally, and seats being sold almost like every minute. It's crazy. So get yours while they're here. And then, my friends, I hope to have one more update on something else we're working on. It's on the heels for On Fire for Good, and it is a movie called On Fire, which, since the writers' strike originally, then the actors' strike separately, our beautiful production has been moving at a snail pace, and then ultimately it totally stopped, which stinks. So although I was hoping to give you a big, beautiful update on this movie today, there was nothing to share as I built a slide deck out last Tuesday and Wednesday, which was disappointing. Fortunately for us, Thursday came. Isn't it awesome what happens if you can just wait a little bit longer with a little bit more faithfulness in your journey forward in life? Fortunately for us, Thursday came, which was when we found out that we received a waiver to move forward and go ahead and get this thing done. So Thursday, we get this news from the writers and from the Actors Guild that we can indeed move forward with the movie called On Fire, which is awesome. Since that has happened, we've already received, let me get the list of things. We just had a call. That's what I'm coming in from hot. We've already signed our designer, our production team, our director, our production designer, our special effects liaison, our stunt coordinator. Who knew that there was a stunt coordinator? Our tax credit expert, and they kept going line after line after line after line after line. These are all people who you don't see on screen, but these are all people who, then the people you see on screen, these are the folks that make them look beautiful and make them look gifted and make them look like talented at the role that they are portraying. So late leaders, Live Inspired Together family, you're the very first. My mom and dad don't even know about this one yet. That On Fire is back on track. And now you're like, well, how on track is it really, O'Leary? It doesn't sound like you've got any talent yet. That's not exactly true. The guy who did these more than 50 movies You've been introduced to him in the past. That's him up there smiling behind the gateway arch. His name is Sean McNamara. McNamara has been in our fair city, but more than that, he's coming back toward our fair city. On Thursday morning, he hooks up his Airstream to his pickup truck and he drives across country, arriving in St. Louis on Saturday. And he's not leaving until the movie's done. And so if you're like, I don't know if I really think this thing is happening. Well, this dude's not leaving until it happens. So for his sake and his 3 boys' sake and his wife's sake, and for my sake, because I don't want to entertain him all year long, it is going to happen. It is his hope that he will be home by Thanksgiving after shooting and then spend the next 8 weeks producing this thing afterwards. So On Fire, with your thoughts, with your prayers, with your generosity, is happening. So that is a big update from today. And normally we save our updates for the end, but when you're talking about making a movie that's going to impact millions of lives with your help, it couldn't wait. So I wanted to just celebrate some good news with all of you today. As you look at this picture, we'll come back to it in a moment. That gentleman up there is Sean McNamara in the back, but it's the man in the front that we'll spend a little bit of time talking about before I introduce my friend and soon to be yours. His name is Denny O'Leary. So now to introduce you to the formal theme of the day, embracing forgiveness, the active choice of giving up hope, ... for a better past. So if you're taking notes at home, family, friends, servants, leaders, forgivers, those in need of forgiveness, we're going to be celebrating, but the embracing forgiveness, the active choice of giving up hope for a better past. So what does that look like? Well, I want to start with these two. 2 months ago, I shared their stories. That's Frank, my grandpa, Vera, my grandmother. I talked about a mistake I made in college, not calling my father after learning that his own mother had passed away. And I also shared the story that day when I was with you live 2 months ago of how my father responded with grace. Yeah, he called me out on it. Yeah, he said it hurt him, but he also responded with tender grace. So in preparing for today, I thought about all the times in my life where my father has just responded with tender grace, love, acceptance, not letting me off the hook, but reminding me that in spite of my own mistakes and brokenness, I still had a place in his home, still had a place in his heart. So very briefly, going to go through a couple stories of my dad. First one, that little boy up there, he looks like mischief because he is. My grandpa, Frank, and grandma Vera used to live in Naples, Florida. If you MapQuest it, this is before the good old days of Southwest Airlines direct flight down to Fort Myers. We drove. We would drive 20 hours through the night to get to Florida. And on one of those trips, when I was an 8-year-old little boy, I asked my dad if I could hold his car keys once we got there. So I'm holding the car keys as we enter into the Holiday Inn or wherever the little hotel is. And I'm cool, man. So I'm swinging around my index finger like the cool kids do. And as I'm swinging this thing around after a 20-hour drive carrying the luggage in, the keys slide off my finger into the elevator shaft, bounce around for a moment, and then down the shaft they go. And I don't know about you, how you would respond if you just driven your wife and 6 kids 20 hours, and then your kid drops the freaking keys down the elevator shaft before you get the luggage out. I know how I would respond. And I remember as I looked at my dad with tears in my eyes, he said, "Baby, that's all right. We can get them." I don't remember much about my 8th year of life, but I remember dropping keys after a 20-hour drive to Florida down an elevator shaft, looking up with tears in my eyes and seeing my father completely cool about it. "That's all right, baby. We can get them out. We can get them out." It's one story of forgiveness. You may say that's small, but when you're the one being affected by it, it doesn't feel very small. The second one was not small. And because so many of you have heard the story, I won't walk you through it this time, but you know how my father showed up in the emergency room, and you know how he showed up as the living embodiment of forgiveness and grace in a marketplace for a little boy who desperately needed love. And my dad was that. And then you have this story, no, not even before Parkinson's disease. When I crashed my father's car, let me tell you the 11-second story. Dad gets Parkinson's disease, knows that he can no longer work effectively, buys a car to get him into retirement and beyond called the Toyota 4Runner. 4 weeks after he buys his car, I ask him if I can take it out to Colorado. He green lights that because my dad is all about giving. As we're driving out to Colorado, my friend Rob crashes the car, man. This is a brand new vehicle that will take my dad into retirement and beyond. And I've crashed this thing in Eastern Colorado before we even get to the mountains. It was a sleepless night. Eventually in the morning, I make the call. And the reason why this grips me is because one of the scenes that moved the director, Sean McNamara, to tears, this one actually shows up in the movie. They portray it beautifully. And he's like, John, I got through the fire without crying. But when that scene happened, when your dad again said, do you not know me by now? As he's slowly fading with Parkinson's disease, it's okay. We can rebuild a car. We can't rebuild a life. That's what moved our director to tears. It moved me to tears. My father, every time I'm with him, moves me usually not to tears, but always to joy. So family, friends, as we step now through this call with this beautiful guy as my embodiment, my example of forgiveness, I want you to think first of the other side of the ledger. No, do not type it in. This one's easy to think about. People who hold those grudges. Remember when you said that? They never let it go. They don't let it go. So we all have examples, and sometimes we are the example in our bad days of this. But as we start our call today, as we move into fall today, as we get ready to bring on my buddy Chuck Jansen today, I want you in the chat to type in the most forgiving person you know. And yeah, Kim and Amy and Amy M. We got 2 Amy's on the call, and Brad and Caleb and Carol and Chris. We got 2 Chris's, Christy. We got 4 Chris's on the call. Chuck and everyone else. Type it in. Who's the most forgiving person you know? I'm going to write down 3 letters. D-A-D. What about you guys? What about you ladies?
John, it's lighting up. So many parents, moms and dads, perfect examples of forgiveness, siblings, brothers and sisters. Kim Sutton says her friend Fran. We got to know more about Fran. Natalie, my dad, my mom and my husband, my partner. Chris G, Jackie shares with us. James says his parents were perfect at forgiveness. My dad, my mom, of course, many people mentioning God and Jesus. My son Zach, who has Down syndrome, says Dave.
Wow.
So many great answers.
Dave, thank you for sharing that. And my daughter who lost her father, Melissa, you told us a lot in that simple answer. So we love you, and we're grateful for your daughter, and we're grateful for you and your life and your willingness to step into a call that is all about forgiveness. So let's step into how we can become more like those people, because the need is real. So to help us do exactly that today is this man, Chuck Jansen. My brother, my friend. I met him more than a decade ago, and I fell in love with him when I met him the first time. I've remained in love with him in the now more than decade that has followed. So Chuck Jansen, listen, I could have a still picture of you up there all day, but then we'll start losing our subscribers and our followers. So I want to see you on the screen live with me. Kindly unmute yourself and welcome to Live Inspired together with John O'Leary.
Hello, John. Thank you so much for having me.
Chuck, we love you, man. And rather than talk about real estate or Chiefs or your family or a million other things that you and I have in common, why is this topic so relevant?
Well, first of all, I got to say, you've been my hope and inspiration a lot of my life. So I thank you. It's an honor to be here. Why is it important? About 11 years ago, I go to a spiritual advisor once a month, and we would pray and talk. And it's Father Tom Tank. And we were talking, and we were talking about the subject of what is missing in the church, in the parish. Like what's missing that we need. And he said, I'll go home and pray on it. And I said, oh my gosh, that's bad news. He's going to pray on it. He comes back a month later and he says, Chuck, we have 3,000 family members here, and we've got half of them have somebody not talking to each other in their family. He said, I think you should I want you to study it for a year, and then we're going to devise a course on forgiveness. I went, huh? And he goes, no, teach people to change and repent, change their hearts. I said, Father, I said, the rectory needs painting. I'll do anything, but I'll paint the rectory in 2 weeks. And he said, no, do it. So anyway, I studied it for a year. I read a lot of books. I listened to a lot of podcasts. I just did a lot of research, talked to a lot of people, and 4 things kind of came to mind. The first one was I've tried to find the wheel. I tried to find a program I could copy from or model after, a successful wheel. I couldn't find one. I found great authors, great podcasts, but no systems. The second thing I found out, I got introduced to the term, yeah, but. Like I would meet a guy and he hadn't talked to his dad for 9 years. And I'd say, I invite you to make peace with your dad. And he goes, yeah, but do you know what he said to me on my birthday 9 years ago? And he just fires up. So I got introduced to the term, yeah, but. Then I also saw the transforming power of forgiveness. I talked to a few people who were forgiven or gave forgiveness, and it was transforming. Now, obviously, Peter comes to mind in the Gospels. I have to talk about the Chiefs a little bit. Did you know that Coach Reed forgave Travis Kelce because he was kicked off his college team? Can you imagine the sin of being kicked off your college team? And that transformed Travis Kelce. And the fourth thing that I found was that, and this was the biggie, I said, forgiving really has to do with how do you get in touch with your suffering? I said, there's a lot of wounds out there. There's a lot of hurting people, and suffering is a big part. How do you acknowledge, to own and process your suffering is critical in the thing. So that's how I got started. So I spent a year, and then we started working on the syllabus, and then it just kind of grew. It's grown.
It has grown, and it has far outgrown your ability seemingly, and certainly your region and city, which is stunning. And Chuck, just to call this out, we have 80 people, man, on this call who would then affect a whole lot of lives beyond that in their businesses and in their teams and in their families and their neighborhoods. So this has the ability to go viral. I also want to let folks know that at the very end of the call, I'll give you Chuck's email address. The hope is that this will be a continuum, that it's not just going to be a 30-minute segment all in today. That's not enough time to talk about the highlights of the movie On Fire, let alone the deep need for forgiveness in your life. But it's a starting point. And so you'll find Live Inspired together, maybe every 3 months or so, we're going to bring on one of you leaders, one of you experts to share what you know so that the rest of us can go and grow and become better through your efforts. So Chuck, over the course of all this time, man, what have you learned about forgiveness that you want to share with our Live Inspired together community today?
A couple of things. Number one, John was very kind. He wrote the foreword to my little workbook. I got a workbook, and then I also have an internet course on it. I got to tell this story because I do a little one night, I call it Tickle Your Heart or Tickle Your Mind on forgiveness. And it was May of 2017 in Kansas City, where everybody on the news had heard of Mike Darby. Mike Darby was shot brutally at 6:30 in the morning walking his 2 dogs. Can you imagine? The news was all over Kansas City. He was the 6th person that this man had killed. So we all knew about it. So it was a couple of months after that, I'm doing that one night class, and then I'm in the back of the room welcoming people and thanking them for coming. And in walks Mrs. Darby and her daughter. Wow. My first thought was, man, you should still be angry. You've got a lot of wounds, And in the other thought, I thought of surrender. On our journey on forgiveness, a lot of times we have to surrender to the Lord. And I said, it was kind of like, I've outpunted my coverage. Like, what am I going to say to this couple? And I say that little prayer, empty me of me, fill me with you. Empty me of me, fill me with you. And I went up to the front. And then, John, can you kind of cue up the video? So Allison and I became friends, and she took the forgiveness course, and she agreed to go on camera to tell her story. Now, you got to understand, folks, this is 3.5 years after I met her. But she really emphasizes the point that forgiveness is a choice. It's a heroic choice, and you got to fight your emotions and your wounds to make that heroic choice. This
Here's
is
Allison.
Allison Darby Boddicker, one of the
So forgiveness is really a
faculty.
choice, and it's obviously not easy for anyone, but you have to make the effort, right? You have to put one foot in front of the other. And for me, I couldn't carry the burden of hating someone or having an angry heart every day because it feels so heavy. And to me, that's a punishment to myself, right? This person doesn't even know me. Am I going to let him take my life too? No, I can't do that. So I had to choose, right, myself and my faith and my family, and to move forward. And I have to choose it every day, because you make that choice, but you have to make it a lifestyle. You know, it's not one day, it's the rest of your life. And I will not lie, there are days when I do feel a heavy heart, or we have to go to court. And I find myself getting ready, you know, at home to go there, and I do feel anxious, or I do feel unsettled. I mean, I feel like that's very natural. You know, when we're in the same room, the same courtroom, and we're breathing the same air, and he's maybe from you to me, and my heart does race. I mean, it's a feeling of anxiety, I think. He probably doesn't know I exist. He probably has no idea who I am or who my family is. But I know who he is, and he's present in my life. But I have to make a choice for him to not control my life. I have to make the choice to live a free life, and to live a life where I have a lot of hope.
Beautiful. I mean, just beautiful.
And Chuck, do you mind if I just step in? And
Yeah, sure.
friends, as you were listening to that, it's so dramatic in her heart and in her words. If there's something that you felt or heard, just type it into the chat. So I'll read through that later on. But through Chuck, I've met Allison and know her heart, and I'm just curious what you heard when you heard this woman speaking right there. So Chuck, our friends are going to be typing that in, but please continue on.
Well, Kim is the next one. Kim is we call them Yeah But faculty. They were 9 courageous people, of which John was one of them, because John did blow up the house, so he has to forgive himself. You know, that's been an interesting journey and process. And so the Yeah But faculty, Kim is a teacher at our parish, and she teaches other courses, but she was raised in a family with a dad with very addictive behaviors. You know, can you imagine how many people listening today have somebody in the house that they're dealing with an addictive behavior? And how do you deal with that? Unbroken promises and just tough, you know, just tough, very difficult. So Kim beautifully, succinctly talks about you can't change the other person, you might as well change yourself. And then she summarizes in 38 seconds the 3 steps. She does it better than anybody. So have you got Kim queued up?
We'll go.
I could fix myself, but I was never going to be able to fix him. Something like that. I mean, I tried and tried to fix him, and it wasn't happening. You can't fix somebody who thinks that everything they're doing is fine. And I couldn't make him see. My mom had divorced him, you know, by the time I was 30 years old. So I didn't have her as the buffer. She'd given up trying to convince him. My brother couldn't convince him. It was what he was. So if I couldn't change him, I was going to have to change something with myself.
And again, Chuck, before you jump in, for our friends, just to type in again what they heard. Make these other individual stories yours. So in her beautiful voice, what did you hear? What stirred you? Chuck, what about you? What did you hear?
I tell you, I said therapists all over America are just applauding, because sometimes they'll work 1 to 2 to 3 years with people before they can get to that accountability. Remember, John, what your mother had you promise, you know, like, do you want to live? You know, you got to get that accountability that I'm in charge of my life. I can change. And Kim is beautiful, beautiful.
When there's more to the story. Would you like me to share that second video, or do you want to set it up a little bit?
Yeah, no, go ahead. The second video is that she summarizes it. It's very complicated, the 3 steps, but in general, the first step is to deal with the suffering, you know, acknowledge, own, and process the suffering, you know, that type of thing. The second one is overcoming your yeah, but. What's your excuse not to forgive? You know, get in touch with your yeah, but. And then the third step is to go from victim to survivor. You know, to let go, drop it, leave it, let it go. What's critical is your destiny is too important. And what we say with shame dies when stories are told in safe places. And really, one of the things we do in the course is we just provide a safe place for people to share their wounds in a non-judgmental way, and then we hold their hand. And people cannot get to problem solving until they've heard, their messages have been heard, their wounds have been heard, their emotions have been acknowledged, et cetera, et cetera. John, I have to interject here. Do you remember when you were invited to that Girl Scouts early on, and you just wanted to be normal? You just wanted to be normal. But the Girl Scouts was a safe place for you to share yourself, and that was integral in your journey to forgive.
You weren't there, man. Those girls were not safe. They're tougher than they look. They're third grade, throwing Samoas my direction and everything else.
And you walked out of there with 22 boxes of cookies.
And that's the way it normally shakes out. All right, well, let's play the final video just so my friends have a sense for this final video from Kim.
Now that I've gone through the, forgiving my father, and then having gone through this forgiveness class that is amazing, I would recommend that anybody just try to follow the steps. First of all, figure out where your hurt is, like I did, and then you have to make that choice to forgive. That's up to you to make that choice. Pray about it, work on it, and just the freedom that you will get from giving it up, letting it go, is amazing,
So one more time, what did you hear? It's one of my favorite questions asked when I'm live in a leadership seminar or a spiritual retreat weekend, or with my friends partying on a Monday afternoon in fall. In beautiful Kim's voice again, what did you hear? So Chuck, what did you hear? What should we have heard clearly?
Freedom. What people can't believe is, when you forgive, you set a prisoner free, only to discover the prisoner was you. And once you forgive, you're free. But it's hard to forgive because we've all been hurt. We've got a lot of wounds, and justice is different from forgiveness. If you remember when John Paul II was shot, now it took him 6 months, but 6 months later, he visited the man who shot him in the prison. He didn't let him go. Justice he has to serve, but to forgive is critical. Forgiveness is your personal journey, and that's a hard concept to grasp or understand.
There's a quote you shared with Meredith and me in preparation that I'm just going to put up on the screen because I loved it. So here it is. And I want folks to recognize you don't need to grow up in an abusive home or have a father who was murdered or be foolhardy enough to burn down your parents' house at age 9, not only causing damage against property and against self, but collateral damage in the way it affected your siblings and your parents. These are massive mistakes. And yet forgiveness is heroic in the little details of life too. It's when someone cuts you off and you experience the freedom of forgiveness. I think Kim Seal typed in earlier, freedom equals forgiveness. That's exactly right. You heard it clearly also from our leaders today. Chuck, as we move toward the finish line, what else would you like to add?
Just a lot of people say the litmus test, what is it? It's basically you have an overwhelming peace when you forgive. You have a desire to tell others. A lot of times people will want to tell others. And then the third one, it's tough, but you pray for the well-being of the perpetrator. Wow. That's very interesting. I love the Live Inspired community because you have a lot of difference makers that have attracted to you because you're a difference maker. And what's interesting about presenting to you all is that I use the term change agent angel. In other words, we need people to facilitate this course because people need to graciously, grace-filled, hold their hands to work them towards forgiveness. And it doesn't happen overnight. Like people don't come in one session and go, oh yeah, I'm going to forgive my sister-in-law for what she did to our family. It takes a long time. It's a process. It's tough. It's a hard process. But later on, John, we're going to offer a free class at the end of the month. I'll send them the booklet. I'd like to limit it to 12 people, but I'd like to just start walking some people through this process. They can email me their contact number and their address so I can mail them the booklet. And then October 27th, that's a Friday, we'll let the group decide if we're going to meet at 1, 2, or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Usually it's a 90-minute session, but you know, because of the introduction on the Zoom, it's a little different than being live. It might go a little bit over 90 minutes.
Right
So-
on. Chuck, I'm going to put it back up on the screen. I'll have Meredith type it into the chat if she hasn't yet. But if in your own life you're feeling bitterness and the weight of the world on your shoulders and you wish it could be removed, consider emailing Chuck. He's my friend. I love him like a brother. He's safe and he's here to serve. So jansenchuck@gmail.com is the email address. If you'd like to share this idea and this story with others, or just join Chuck for that journey, not just 15 minutes, which is what Chuck was allotted today, but a 90-minute deeper dive, just email him, learn more. And it comes with my blessing and my strongest encouragement. I love Chuck, and I think the work he's done over the last dozen years, and specifically around forgiveness over the last few, will affect you positively in your life. So Chuck, on behalf of our Live Inspired Together community, I'm going to encourage them right now to give you a little shout out. So if you enjoyed learning a little bit, the first baby step today, would you just type in your gratitude to Chuck in the chat right now?
My honor and my appreciation and my gratitude. You have no idea. This is even better than being your Uber driver.
John, I think giving Chuck only 15 minutes is the meanest thing you've ever done.
Well,
I
he
mean,
needs to offer a little bit of forgiveness my way. I knew it would be tight. We have a total of
Are
about
you
30
kidding
minutes.
me?
And when you bring folks onto the call and you give a little bit of update and all the other things we try to do, it's not enough time. But however, if you know it's not enough time, this is about warming water. And we warm the water. We hopefully keyed a little bit of interest. And I hope my friends who want to take a deeper dive are emailing Chuck right now. He's a great man. He's got a servant's heart.
if you do nothing else over dinner tonight, but think about your yeah buts. I mean,
Yeah.
I know when I first started talking to Chuck, just the power of that and how many I have in my own life, just even with the little things, like you said, in traffic or, you know, in the course of any given day. It just, even that's a powerful takeaway, if nothing else, for this evening.
John, you so well put it. You don't have to have a major catastrophe in your life, but once you get the process down and you practice it, it leads to a virtue and you become more virtuous. So it's good stuff. And it's not about me. I was a witness to this program. I didn't create this program. God kept sending me interesting people and I was a witness to it. There's a big difference. That's why I'm so excited about it.
I know. And you've had an incredible heart around building it out. And I'm honored to cheerlead you forward. So congratulations on all that you've done and all that you will do, the lives you will impact going forward. Final little story, a little bow before we open it up for any questions that my friends may have or any feedback they may want to offer John or Chuck or the rest of our leadership team. My dad had, and this is in the confidence of this call. So here we go. I might be speaking out of turn, but I'm always up for asking for forgiveness afterwards. My dad built a business and was let go by the partners he started that business with because of Parkinson's disease. That is a very painful thing when you did something extraordinarily well. And then as soon as you become sick, the people you built this thing with and for say, well, there's the exit, sir. You've done enough around here now. And that's it. They cut the cord and my dad's on his own. Not only emotionally when you lose your job like that, but then financially, they weren't ready for this. So for my dad, he held on to that for a little while. And then in a church service, he realized the Our Father requires the words, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those, as we forgive those. So for a couple Sundays in a row, my dad was unable to say the Our Father. And then the following week, I heard him go back to it, say it loud in this pew. And I asked him about that afterwards, and I've never told the story before. And he said, John, I wasn't able to say that prayer because I wasn't able to forgive those who had burned me. And I'm liberated from that now. And forgiveness is heroic. So my father is heroic, not only forgiving me, forgiving others who have let him down in the past, forgiving himself, I'm sure, for many mistakes and misspoken words he shared, but for being an embodiment of what it looks like to be free. And when I think about what Live Inspired Together is, it is a group of people who come in from all over the United States and all over the world to get free and then to bring that freedom back to those they are called to serve. So I love you guys. I'm grateful that you joined us on a pretty heavy topic called forgiveness, but I wanted you to have that kind of hope of a past you cannot change, but a future you certainly are liberated to do so. So if you have any questions for Chuck Jansen, John O'Leary, Meredith Bogus, or anyone else on the call right now, feel free to type that in right now. We're here to take any questions you have, or if you prefer, you can unmute. And you can just unmute yourself and say, hey, Jansen, or hey, O'Leary, or hey, Meredith, I have a question for you. So feedback, questions. We are unplugged for the next 5 minutes before we start wrapping up. Gotta run, Annabelle. I look forward to more. Me too. How about we'll talk about more real quick while Annabelle's running. You got Jansen's address already. Next month, November 6th, before we get there, is going to be back.
Yeah, back in our noon slot.
Meredith, go for it.
Yeah, next month, November 6th, back in our noon slot. Mark your calendars. From there, I know a bunch of folks have to go, but I saw so many new faces on the call today, John. Really, we've welcomed a lot of new members to Live Inspired together the past couple months, and it is so gratifying to see you show up for our calls, because I truly think just this little time together, face to face, is it's so important to me. It's a joy for John and I both to do, and I know that's true of our expanded team and so many on this call. So if you're here for the first time today, thanks. We hope you'll come back next month.
And you won't want to miss it, because beyond writing a check, which is kind of what we think generosity means, we're going to ignite a spirit of generosity in all aspects of life. So we're going to move away from the leaf burning parties and Halloween and trick-or-treating and everything else you might be doing. We're going to be prepping for Thanksgiving, but the way we're going to open up our hearts in gratitude is by giving, and not in the ways you think. So I'm excited to unpack that with you. We'll, I'm sure, have updates on this baby, the movie. We will certainly by that point have casting updates for my friends who are local, or you want to make a journey into St. Louis. We'll have opportunities of having you in the back of the movie, man. So there'll be opportunities of being a supporting cast member in various scenes. So we'll be sending you additional information on that as it becomes clear. It's going to be awesome. And then finally,
maybe next month you'll
go ahead, Chuck.
Maybe next month you'll explain what's the need of a stunt man.
You know what? Why don't I explain it right now? We have 62 people left on the call, and my mom is no longer on the call, so I can be honest. In the movie On Fire, a couple things happen that are pretty dramatic. One is a little boy named John O'Leary catches on fire. That will happen.
Oh, wow.
Our little actor, who we have already just about secured, will be lit on fire. It'll be a stunt double, but this little guy is going to be lit on fire, coming through a garage, through a house. Yeah. And that's dramatic. But John doesn't wisely put himself out. John has a brother who puts him out. John has a sister who runs into a burning house. There's a lot of drama that takes place over a couple scenes in the movie, and it's really masterfully told through the script. There's another scene you heard a little bit about today that caused our director to cry. And it's not the movie called On Fire just because a kid catches fire. It's because what life looks like once you're on fire for something bigger than yourself. And there's a scene where John crashes the car in Colorado, and it's unbelievably told. And it turns out to be a love story. I'm not going to tell you any more details about it than that, but it's an unbelievable story. And part of that love story ends with a phone call going into John's dad the following day. And then the actor playing John's dad, who we have reading the script right now, stay tuned on that. And what he says in response moves Sean to tears. So it is... If you want an action-packed movie, come check out On Fire. If you want a love story, come check out On Fire. If you want a faith drama, come check out On Fire. If you want a feel-good Hallmark movie, don't check out On Fire. Stay on the Hallmark channel, because this is more than that. But it's going to require some stunt directors and actors who can do some pretty gutsy things. What other questions do you have regarding the movie, the event, or forgiveness as we move toward the top of the hour? Jansen, your hand is up.
Is Jim Caviezel available?
Yeah, so we have some big names out there and some lesser known folks. The most important thing, and I've said this to my friends, which is everyone on the call, I'm less worried about the name than the heart. And I know Jim has an incredible heart, but if he doesn't have a heart for the project, we don't want them. And so we are attracting already at this point folks that want in. I got 2 separate texts over the weekend from actors who want to play people.
That's
and
cool.
so it's super cool. Stay tuned. Kim Seal, your hand is up.
Chuck, I thought that was a beautiful lesson today. You know, one of the areas where I struggle a lot, and I think this is reasonably common with others, and I hope your course also goes into this. We think a lot about the concept of forgiving others for things they have done, and a lot of times we forget we also need to forgive ourselves. And John has talked about that beautifully with some of the things that he's been very vulnerable to share from his own life. But I know for me personally, it's a whole lot easier for me to forgive somebody else than it is to forgive myself. So just an additional thought.
Such a good thought.
Kim, you're not the Lone Ranger. When I give presentations, people always come up to me. That is the most difficult thing to do. It's like the graduate school of forgiveness is to forgive yourself. It's tough. It's tough.
And Kim, you're seeing a lot of amens and me toos, and Jansen nodded his head, and so did O'Leary, and so did anybody else with a heart. I've always found it's easier to forgive someone no longer in your life. I'm excellent at forgiving people who've died. I struggle when I'm dealing with a spouse or a child or a parent or a neighbor who somehow I feel like they've wronged me. And no one do I struggle with more than the reflection in the mirror. So yeah, the course that you're referencing that Chuck Jansen has helped create is it does speak directly to that. And Diane, this is from your iPhone. I'll read it aloud so everyone else can hear you. If God can forgive me, how dare I not forgive myself?
Amen.
And you have a forgiveness expert on the call with you right now, and Jansen. You have his friend O'Leary and Meredith on the call as well. If you have any other questions for us, please feel free to type it in or chat it out, or we're going to begin wrapping up this call.
I teach in the prisons, and here, is it on? Yeah. And a prisoner was sharing, an incarcerated man was sharing that he couldn't forgive himself, and a fellow man in the class said the same thing to him, that if God has forgiven you, how dare you super trump God and say that you're not worthy, you know? And he gave him a little 2-minute pep talk, and I wish I could have recorded. Obviously, no recording device is allowed in prison, but it was beautiful. It was stunning. I was honored to be part of it.
Chuck, just so you know, your friend James Strickland typed in, forgiveness is not forgetting, but choosing not to remember.
Amen. Amen. Because everybody goes, is it forget and forgive? No, you don't forget it, but you remember it differently. You reframe the event that you look at it differently. Reframing the event.
Kelly Wallace wants to know, Chuck, how have you personally experienced the fruits of forgiveness?
Oh my gosh, it's like a high. It's like, that's why I'm stuck on this. I kind of wanted to just retire and play golf 4 days a week, and I can't. This is like in my blood. This is, I'm committed. It's like when you see people struggle and go through the process and then see the freedom after, it's like a opioid. It's like you can't stop wanting it. And it is so universal. You can be rich, poor, young, old, Republican, Democrat, white, black, yellow, green. You can be anything, but everybody struggles with forgiveness. And there just isn't. We've only been studying it for the last 50 years. You know, there's not a whole lot out there. I tried to find the wheel, you know. So
Meredith, take us to the finish line, my friend.
Thanks all. I appreciate your time. We're coming up on 5 o'clock. We went longer than we did, but I thought these questions at the end were really good. We love hearing from you in this way and just giving you a chance to talk to each other. So appreciate you. Have an amazing week. Expect more updates from us soon on all things movie and event related. And in the meantime, come see us over at Live Inspired Together.
That's where we will be dropping updates on movies and events and everything else. So I'm engaged in that community, as you know. Meredith is a monster at making sure we stay in touch with everybody, and we're here to serve you. So whether you want Chuck's email address, or you need a friend, or if there's something that we can do to make a difference in your life or in the life of someone else struggling or longing to do more, that's why we're here. That's why we're in community, and we're grateful you're in that community with us. So family, friends, Democrats and Republicans, for this time and until next time, my name is John O'Leary. That was Chuck Jansen. That was my friend Meredith Sainer-Boggess. And today is your day. Embrace the gift of forgiveness and live inspired. We'll see you next month.